There we go. Okay, boom. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this evening. We have a magnificent guest with us tonight, one who is going to give us some amazing information as well as inspiration, none other than our Sister LaTricia Muhammad out of Phoenix, Arizona. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the People's Podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And what I want to ask you is, how did you enjoy this last weekend when we had the opportunity to meet? How was the weekend?
Oh, the weekend was fabulous. It was so awesome being able to see all the believers, all the guests. And of course, you're talking about the premiere, Brother Ilya Rashad Muhammad's movie. And that was, I've never been to a premiere before, although I'm from California, so I'm not Hollywood per se. However, to have that many people come out just to see this phenomenal movie, it, let's say, tired, excited, happy, relieved.
Yes, ma'am. And I want to make sure that I thank everybody, but I specifically want to thank the mighty MGT who are holding it down on post, helping make sure the white carpet was so smooth because that was the area that the People's Podcast was going live doing interviews, and you sisters made it so smooth, and y'all had a great spirit the whole time, and y'all were on your feet the whole time like us. So shout out to all the
Yes,
sisters that
sir.
holding it
Praise
down
be
as
to
well.
Allah. But in heels.
Yes, yes, right, sister NP is like that. Okay, Sister Naeem, Sister Green, Sister Miriam. All right. So the first question that we have for you, ma'am, is when did you first hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Technically, I heard the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad when I was about 7 years old. My older cousin had an album of Malcolm X. And of course, I didn't remember this until maybe 20 years ago. And he said, "Oh, you have to come hear this album. Oh, this black guy Malcolm X, he is talking about white people so bad. He's calling them devils and all this stuff." And so we're listening to it and making all those kind of faces that you do when you're 6 and 7 years of age. That was the absolute first time I heard the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Hmm.
I heard it and then I didn't think anything else about it. So that was the
Okay.
very first time. And then I heard of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad from my father, who is from, the LA area. And his best friend joined the mosque. And, at the time, Malcolm X was often in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And he changed his name to Yusuf. Now, my father did not join. However, he would go to the mosque. So as I got older, he would talk about Malcolm X and he would talk about his best friend. And I started hearing the teachings at that point. Then, of course, the minister was on Donahue. But before that, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. It was myself and another brother in high school. And in California, Donahue came on at 4 o'clock. We got out of school at about 3:10, 3:15 or something like that. And I didn't live close to the school. I was in a completely different county. So it would take me about 25, 30 minutes to get home. I literally ran over the hill so I can get on BART, which is like the subway in the Bay Area. So I can get that very, very, very first train so that I can be at home in front of the television at 4 o'clock to literally hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So from that point, I was like, oh my gosh, this is something. This is what I've kind of been looking for. And then there was a span of years. So I was about 17 at the time. And then maybe 6 years later is when I decided I'm looking for a connection with God, but the church is not a place for me. And I knew that the church wasn't a place for me when I was little because I didn't like going to church
Mm.
ever. I used to tell my mother, I hate going to church. And she would say, don't you say you hate God? You get popped. Don't you say you hate God? And I said, I didn't say I hated God. I said I hated going to church. There's a difference. And I just knew the church wasn't a place for me. I never fell into church. I didn't attend church regularly. However, I believed in God. My mother showed me what it looked like to have faith when I was growing up. But I was not reared in the church. I'm one of those rare Black people who was just not reared in the church.
Mm.
And so when I heard the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it hit in my heart. It's like, this is what I was like, I want to be a Muslim, especially after I saw the Donahue show. But I knew where the mosque, I had no idea where the mosque was. No idea at all. And it just wasn't time yet. You know, it was what I wanted, but that's not how Allah had things planned for me. So it took about 6 years. And the minister came to San Francisco, and I was still looking for the mosque. And that's when my mother would tell me, "Oh, I saw the brothers selling the final call. I bought a paper from them." I said, "Please ask them where the mosque is." And then, of course, not a brother, not an FOI in sight. All of a sudden, it's like
Mm.
nowhere. She's like, "I haven't seen the brothers. I haven't seen the brother I usually buy a paper from." I'm like, "What is going on?" And then she said, "Oh, there, I found a Muslim bakery, your Black Muslim bakery. It's like a couple of blocks from my job." And so I walked in there. That was not the nation. That
Okay.
was
Okay.
those who followed Yusuf Bey.
Mm.
And I walked in, and the experience wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But the brother who was behind the counter, he said, "Oh, you looking this?" He goes, "This is not the Nation of Islam. You looking for Farrakhan. They are on X, Y, and Z."
Mm.
And the mosque had moved. So it was still some time. Still, I'm still out of time. I'm just not in time, period.
Yes, ma'am.
And then one day I get a knock on my door, literally, and it is the minister of Muhammad's Mosque 26B, Minister Keith, Brother Sabur Muhammad now, and he knocked on my door. And to this day, he says, "You're my first fish," you know, because we
Mm.
lived in the same big, huge apartment complex.
Mm.
And I literally went to the mosque with him and his wife. That is how I finally found the mosque.
Praise be to the Lord. Well, hey, that's right. Okay, so LaTricia, beautiful story. And so many people are showing you love right away. Sister Miriam says, "Awesome like a family." Sister Naima, thank you very much. Brother Nelson Ramos, Brother Kelvin Stevenson, thank you all for watching. And shout out to our YouTube family as well. Sister Auntie, Brother Kente, Brother Musa, everyone on YouTube as well.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
how did your family? Okay, first of all, your parents. May I have their names?
My father's name is MC, and my mother's name is Darlene.
Mm, perfect. All right. And how did your family feel and friends feel about you accepting the teachings, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Well, my mother was fine with, well, both of my parents were fine with it. They didn't have any resistance. I mean, I was an adult, and even if I wasn't an adult, I was very strong-willed like I am today. If it's something that I want to do and I feel is best for me, I'm going to do it. There's absolutely nothing you can do to stand in my way
Yes, sir.
to stop me from doing this. So my mother was like, "Oh, okay, I see, I see." She said, "Oh, and then, oh, so how was it at the mosque?" And she would come to some of the meetings and what have you. She is a supporter of Minister Farrakhan, but she's just never registered. And then, of course, I had to hear about my father's best friend. "Oh, yes, I remember when he fell into the ranks and he registered and he was under Malcolm X and things like that." So he was kind of excited, but it's just something that they didn't feel was for them, but it was for me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And what advice would you give to new people who are accepting the teachings with how to handle their family and friends in a gentle way?
In a gentle way. I think each individual will probably have to pull a family member to the side and just somewhat explain to them that this is what is resounding for them, and that they are about to get on a path, or they have taken a path of righteousness. I mean, if they wanted to become a nun, will the resistance be so strong? Or let's say they wanted to become a devout Christian. Would the resistance be so strong? What is it that you fear about Islam? You know, it's not like they're getting ready to move to some country and do something that's unrighteous or be someone's doorstep. You have to know that you have raised me well, but I am getting ready to get involved in a relationship with God, number one. So you may not like the man that God chose, but I love God and how my life has improved. I had a family member one day. I had my I didn't have my hair scarf draped. I had it wrapped and I was fasting. It was like one of maybe the second or third time that I decided to fast. And I went around family and I like how people say, oh, we get together, it's Thanksgiving in November. Thanksgiving was every weekend with my family. So that's why it never phases me. Every weekend was Thanksgiving. And I was at a family member's house and my cousin, he's, I don't know, he just kind of, I guess he decided he was mad at me for wanting to be a Muslim and called himself getting ready to lay into me and tell me about myself. And he said, you around over here looking all crazy. And I was like, well, what is it that's crazy? You with your hair covered. And I said, man, I said, look, let me tell you something. I'm trying not to get mad, but I'm still that cousin that's crazy. He was like, you're not supposed to be doing that as a Muslim. I'm like, you're not supposed to be doing that as my cousin, but we could take it outside. You know, I'm fresh in. The old person is just right. It's not even off my shoulder. You know, it's still right there, fresh and new. So he left me alone. He left me alone.
Okay, good. Praise be to Allah. All right, now I wanted to ask you, when we met, I hear a lot of sisters. I came home and I told my sisters, Miriam and Naima, I said, yo, I met somebody who said that she knew mommy and our mother and that she, you know, was great training in the Vanguard days. Can you let us know what it was like, you know, being a Vanguard in the 90s and all of that good stuff?
It was wonderful being a Vanguard. It's always wonderful being a Vanguard, to be able to serve and be the first there and the last to go and the first to arrive again and the last to go again. Your mother was such a beautiful sister. She was always so sincere when she saw you. And even if it was the first time meeting, she approached you and hugged you and cared for you as though she had known you for years. And she knew every Vanguard's name. That's what was so impressive with me. Like, you know, everybody. And she was like, oh, I'll remember your name. And she never forgot a name. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, golly, that is, I know, kind of, golly is just such, such a Gomer Pyle kind of statement. However, I was just so impressed. I can't remember everyone's name. I will admit, and I'll say I have to say it a couple of times and remember and remind myself and have someone to remind me. I'm sorry, remind me of your name again. And then after a few times, I get it. But your mother got it. Like earlier, before we got on the air, you said, okay, I'm a struggle with this name, LaTricia. And I said, no, just think of Patricia, but replace a P with an L. And usually people get it. But she wasn't like that. She was like, oh, yes, ma'am, Sister LaTricia. Oh, yes, ma'am. You know, your mother was, she was like the epitome of a Vanguard. She was the bomb. She was so instrumental in the class, instrumental in the teaching and the training of the Vanguard age sisters in the Nation of Islam. And her staff was wonderful as well. You know, Sister Echo, Sister Abiola, all of them. They were so fantastic, you know, and to this day, I still have the curriculum that she put out. Like literally, I have it. I have letters from her that went to every city that has your mother's handwritten signature on it. So every time I look at through that particular binder and I see all the Vanguard training, I'm like, oh, wow, I remember this. Oh, I remember that. You know, when we were in, you had to earn that uniform. You had to be a good MGT. You had to know your 7 training units. You had to have it down pack, and you studied and you worked hard just to get that phase 1 pin. And then you went into the next phase, and it's like, hey, you can get that phase 2 pin. And then we had Vanguard graduations. One of them was out here in 2001, right before I moved to Phoenix. There was the Vanguard retreat. It was so much fun. Your mother is just so beautiful. May Allah be pleased with her. There'll never be another.
Beautiful. Okay, all praises to Allah. Yes, ma'am. And what was it like for you to serve as the captain of the Vanguard, the student captain of the Vanguard?
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work, but it was fun work. When you love something enough, it truly does not feel like work most of the time. Of course, we had our challenges because the class in Oakland was small. It was a small class, but it allowed me to be able to deal with different women because I had students also. I had 2 16-year-olds. So that's not uncommon today to have a 16 and a 17-year-old. But back then, when in Oakland, it was very unusual. But these 2 sisters also were raised in the nation, so they came in with their parents. So you have to remember okay, sisters, these sisters have children. These sisters don't know how to drive. These sisters, they barely legal. So it's like, so you have to be like, a substitute mother, a surrogate mother to a degree, and they're still finding themselves and learning things. And so that's when you really, and at a very young age, you learn how to really be very gentle and protect the spirit of our teenage girls, because unfortunately, sometimes they can be mishandled. So you have to be kind of like that mama bear, like, no. Leave her alone. She's just expressing herself. It is perfectly okay for her to have that earring on. No. Don't mess with her. No. No, leave her alone. Just leave her be. She is 16, still trying to find herself. Let her find herself. When she gets a little too far away, we reel them back in. But don't kill the spirit of the believers. Don't kill the spirit of new babies that are coming in. You have to act like mother and a mother bear at that point because they're new coming in. My daughter just registered last year, and so she'll be graduating this year. And that's the one thing that I try to be hands off and let the Vanguard take care of it. But I still watch. I'm like, because we still have to make sure that we don't kill the spirit. And we have a beautiful Vanguard class. We have beautiful POC. They have a beautiful student lieutenant. So I don't have to worry that someone's going to come and kill her spirit and mishandle her improperly. They're very, very loving and very nurturing. And that's what they need for these younger sisters.
Beautiful. All praise due to Allah, and people aren't bear witnesses. Sister Miriam says, "Teach." Praise be to Allah. Beautiful. People want to show love on YouTube. Sister Naima says, "All praise due to Allah." Excellent. All right. My next question for you is, ma'am, have you ever been faced with fear? And if so, how have you overcome that fear?
Yes, I'm sure I have been faced with some form of fear. I'll tell you, and it's not a someone or something. I relocated here in 2001, like I said, and the minister had a special meeting for all the registered believers and those who were registered in Phoenix. I think this was March of 2001. And after I think it was like 1,500 people that showed up, something like that. And then at the end, he decided to shake everyone's hand. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks before that, I have found out that the employer, because I used to work in finance, I was a broker, I worked for Charles Schwab, announced that they would be doing layoffs. I knew I was going to lose my job because I brought I brought a San Francisco salary to Phoenix. And Phoenix did not pay like San Francisco paid. So I had a fear of losing my job. I had no family out here. My husband wasn't here yet. And it was just me. And so that's very stressful. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm like, I'm sure I can get another job, but will I be able to maintain what I have? Because I had to buy a car. I didn't have a car before. I didn't always need one in the Bay Area. There's decent public transportation, and I'm not afraid to get on the bus or the train or anything like that to do what I need to do. However, in the Phoenix area, no, there was no light rail at the time. There was nothing, and the buses barely ran. So I'm thinking ahead of time, like, okay, if I end up not having a car, how am I going to get to work? And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm stressing. And apparently I was grinding my teeth in my sleep at night. And then when I did sleep, and then I was having insomnia. So back to the meeting, the minister decides to shake everyone's hand. And so I was like, okay, the instruction was shake the minister's hand, give him the greetings, move on, because it's a lot of y'all. That's what I was going to do, follow the instructions. So I got to the minister, shook his hand, said, "Assalamu alaikum, sir. Thank you, love you." And then he looked at me and he said, "You'll be okay, sister." And I said, "Oh, yes, sir." And he said, "No, you will be okay." And I knew then what he was talking about. And of course, all the tears started welling up in my eyes, but I knew what he was talking about. And that night was the first night that I was able to sleep peacefully because I knew what he meant. He said, "I'm going to be okay." Okay, I'm going to have to step out on faith and know that I am going to be okay, because this man, who I believe is the man of God, just told me I was going to be okay. So I got to go with it. And I was okay. I met a person who knew a person. It's not always what you know, is who you know.
That's right.
So I met a person who knew a person, and I ended up going to a networking meeting, and I got a job. And then when that one didn't work out, the person that I knew who was working there, her mother got me another job. So it worked out. So yeah, so that would be the fear of being out of doors, being homeless, being jobless, cashless, money, the whole list. So that was the fear that I definitely had. And that's when you have to absolutely learn how to step out on faith.
Praise be to Allah. Go ahead and teach.
Yes, sir. All praises due to Allah.
And Sis LaTricia, do you have any plans of going into the student ministry?
Oh, you're the second person that asked me about that. Minister Halim, our local minister here, our student minister here, asked me about it. And I told him I would consider it. I just have to figure out how to work it into my schedule. Being a student officer and everything, and being busy with mosque activities, I have to figure out how to work that out. So I haven't quite yet, but I told him I would think about it. So the answer is I am still thinking about it.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, praise be to Allah. I wanted to ask you about, I often ask the men, the FOI, or just men, period, about the Million Man March and the impact that it played on them as the men. But as you get a sister, what was the climate like leading up to the Million Man March, and how did it impact you as a woman?
Ooh, the climate leading up to the Million Man March. Oh gosh, I was able to see the minister, it seemed like every other month, because he was in the Western region so often. And my thought process was, if my car can get me there and or my money could get me there via an airplane ticket, I was going to be there. And that's what I did. So the minister was everywhere in the Western region, and I was there as well. So leading up to it, it was a blessing to be able to see him so often. We don't see him as often right now, but at that time, all the time, I was traveling so much that I started getting exhausted, and my doctor told me, you can't travel anymore for 30 days. Day 31, I was on an airplane. I told her, I said, I don't know if I can do 30 days. She says, you're going to have to. Okay. So nothing happened within those 30 days, but on day 31, I was gone. I was on a plane to see the minister somewhere in the Western region because he was here so often. And so leading up to it, the spirit was high. We were doing a lot of fundraisers at the local mosque to help those get to rent a bus for those who were not able to fly, and, rent a bus, get hotel rooms, what have you, do some care packages for those who were going to be on that bus. And then there were a group of us who were together watching it from so early in the morning until it was over. So the spirit was high. It was so beautiful just to see that many Black men in one place and nothing going on but peace and unity. Yes. Yes.
Excellent. All praises to Allah. We have a few more questions for our sister, Sis LaTricia, but we have a quick 60-second commercial break for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. We're grateful for every like, share, and subscription, as well as every and shout out to all the people who cash app your anonymous cash apps. We are grateful for those as well. And thank you for everyone who's tapped in all around the world. Moment.
Any of those services. Sister Miriam's ABC I Love Me, children's book and coloring book, and now Spanish book, all three available on Amazon.com. Sister Naima's Stay on Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country, right here in the studios of Atlanta Dress in the best of fashion. Brother Kenneth's Bow Tie Maker Extraordinaire. He'll ship you bow ties anywhere across the nation. Henry Carter's King Henry Turkey Legs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Rashad Muhammad's COVID-19 Disinfected Cleaning Services, out of Chicago. Student Minister Sharif Muhammad's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, available on adulsharif.com. And lastly, Brother Joshua Muhammad's book, Cleopatra, as well as No Father, No Excuse, both available on Amazon.
Perfect. As well as shout out to Sister Sherry Muhammad with Asiatic Minds. If you all have children and you want to enroll them virtually into school, they teach STEM all around the world. Young kings and queens, they teach them STEM. So shout out to Sister Sherry. Shout out to AsiaticMinds.com. They have an amazing staff, faculty, parents. It's a beautiful experience. Thank you very much. Right back to Sister LaTricia. See how I got the name? Boom, LaTricia. Look how quick we did.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about your advice for future wives.
Ooh. Before you even get married, read Brother Nuri's books. But also know that if this is the individual that you want to spend the rest of your life with, that's the plan, then fight to make that happen. I'll be married for 30 years next month on the 18th, February 18th. It'll be 30 years married. And, the one thing that we've thrown out is the option to divorce. Many of us get divorced for silly, frivolous reasons, and then we don't hear one another out. And sometimes you may not hear that person for some years to come. You may not know what they're saying, and it's like, oh man, this is what you've been telling me for 2 and 3 years, but you've sat down and you've discussed it. And not to say that you may not argue, you may not have disagreements. You don't necessarily have to argue. You may not have disagreements, but one of the things is that I'm not going to say, well, we could just divorce. You could just be free. Go on ahead and be with somebody else. Go ahead and get someone who's this, that, and the other, coming from either a sister or a brother. But just know that anything that is worth having is worth fighting for. And so you have to go through the struggle of marriage. You're two separate people trying to be one. Can you imagine that? I mean, if you were just to imagine something trying to be just one, it's very difficult to say the least. But, you have your ups, you have your downs, you have that what is it called? The 7-year itch and the 3-year trial. The first 3 years are the hardest. And who's to say that the next 6 or 9 may not be hard either? Just know that that person is your best friend. My husband is my best friend. I've been knowing him for more than half my life. I met him when I was like 15. So I've been knowing him quite a while. However, we've had to fight for what we have, which is marriage. Not fight each other, but fight for the marriage, because sometimes, miscommunication makes the gap so huge, and someone has to take a step back and say, okay, I know you upset. I'm just not going to say nothing right now. But when we come back to this, we're going to talk so that we can both have an understanding. And then you'll find out, oh, I thought you said this, that, and the other. It's like, no, I said X, Y, and Z. And this is how we have communication issues. We have to want to talk it out. And some of us don't want to talk. One of the things that Brother Nuri said when he came out here was to the sisters with regards to men, that men don't really want to talk. When they're faced with, something that where we disagree, they want to think. They want to think about it. They don't want to talk. They don't want to communicate. And that is something that I learned. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you don't want to talk? Fine, don't talk. But then we'll talk later. Later may not be the same day. Okay, let me make that plain. Later may not be the same day. But we're not going to do the silent treatment either. We're just not going to talk about this because he's thinking about it. And then I've just learned to just let it go. I'm like, okay, that's some of the things that I've learned to do is just LIG it, let it go. Just let it go for right now, because I'm not going to be mad. It doesn't, both of us don't need to be mad. You can be mad or I could be mad. However, but then it's like, then it starts to bleed over into other things. Then, sisters, when you get ready to cook, you wonder why your food tastes nasty because you was mad. Don't cook while you mad. And then you might snap at the children and hurt their feelings when their feelings are very raw and sensitive. No, you got to let it go. And just while he's thinking and being quiet, you start to think and be quiet, and don't say, well, I want to talk about it. Why don't you want to talk about it? Because I don't want to talk about it. Because there's going to be a time when the shoe is on the other foot and you don't want to talk about it. You're thinking, okay, how can I get my point across and or work out something that's in my mind based on the situation at hand? But what we don't want to do is snap and blow up so much so to where you're saying, well, you could just leave, or I'ma just leave and we could just divorce. And no, that's the struggle of marriage. It comes with the territory. But if you have someone who you can sit down and talk to, but then you have to reciprocate and be willing to sit down and listen, then you can have marriages that last long enough. Then there's no such thing, not perfect, but just long enough. And we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. I believe we can get through this. We might have to come back to it in a month or two, but we come back to it and we discuss it. You may have to have a notebook and start writing stuff down, and then you come back to it later and say, ooh, no, I don't think that was right. I must have been really emotional. We have to rise above emotions.
That's right.
Into the thinking of Allah. But
Beautiful.
Anything worth having is worth fighting for. So know that is what you want.
All praises. So like you teaching. Go ahead, Sister LaTricia.
Yes, sir.
And people are bear witness in the comments. Sister Jocelyn, Sister Anaya, Sister Aisha. Everybody's showing nothing but love all around the world. Praise be to Allah. Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask you your advice for future mothers.
Ooh, always seek the advice of those who have already had children, who are older than you, much older than you. That is what I advise as far as rearing your children. But when you are pregnant, always be your number one advocate. You should be that anyway, but especially while you are pregnant. Be your number one advocate. If you feel something is wrong and doesn't feel right with your pregnancy, all of a sudden you're not feeling good, hey, you go to your doctor, be your number one advocate. Say, no, 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 no. Something is not right. And my mother always taught me what one won't do, another one will. So you don't have to stay with the same physician. And you can always call up your sister friend who has had multiple children, you know, and know that it's okay to question. The doctors know that it's okay to question a nurse, ask questions when we don't quite understand. My first child was literally 19 ounces. So that's very, very small. That's 1 pound, 3 ounces, a little tiny itty bitty thing. And Allah just steered me in the direction of wanting to know about premature and high risk pregnancies, only because I was going to need to use that information 20 years down the line, a long way down the line. And I didn't realize that until after I've already had my third child. And all of mine were high risk pregnancies. So she was really little. And sometimes I acted like a patient. Sometimes I acted like I was a nurse. I'm not a nurse, but the doctor was like, are you sure you're not a nurse? No, I'm not a nurse. You know, and all the tears and what have you. And she was born when she was 28 weeks exactly. So always consult sisters who have had children before, especially with rearing them. I used to want my oldest to write her name. And I'd say, write your name. And she would fight me tooth and nail. And I just thought, okay, this is not going to work. So I went to a sister in my mosque who had lots of children. She homeschooled every single one of them. They are highly intelligent. Okay. And she said, oh, she already knows how to write her name. Leave her alone. I said, what do you mean? I never showed her. She said, trust me, she knows how to write her name. And she told me about her youngest son. And he said, Mommy, I can read. She goes, well, I haven't showed you how to read. He was like, I can read. And so she said, are you sure? And she asked him, okay, well, here, read the book. And it wasn't a book that she would read all the time. So she just gave him a little book, easy to read book for a child. And he read the book like it was nothing. And lo and behold, one day I just gave her a pencil. I just set it on the paper. And I said, can you do me a favor and just write your name? I just want to see if you can write your name. And then she wrote her name out. And I was like, I'll be doggone. Wow. So see, it does help to have sisters who are already experienced, who have children, and sometimes even with discipline. You can learn from those sisters, and including your mother. I learned from my mother. And then there were some things that my mother did. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. You know, I remember that as a child. I'm not doing that one. I'm gonna do this one the Muslim way.
Yes, ma'am. Beautiful. And people will bear witness, all of the sisters in the comments clapping, snapping, Black Girl Magic, all the good stuff. All right, I wanted to ask you, what type of music do you enjoy listening to, ma'am?
Oh, I listen to most music. So I am very, very, very diverse. So what do I mean by that? I think the only music I don't listen to is probably trap music, because I'm not quite sure what it is.
Okay.
However, I do like the old school, of course, Motown, R&B. I listen to pop. Okay, so I do listen to NSYNC. I will say that.
Okay.
I know their song. I know their music. I listen to rap. Let's see. I listen to classical music as well, so I can sit and just chill. And I don't have to be in I just want to relax. No, I just want to listen to a beautiful voice. So I listen to classical music. I listen to some grunge music. You know, Stained, all my Stained fans out there, Incubus, all of that. I listen to rock. Fears of a Down.
Okay, okay.
I'm quite around all the way over. So it just depends on my mood. Lately, I will say I've been on a Mary J. Blige, Keisha Cole thing. So
Okay.
it'll be a whole day. I'm just listening to MJB, and then I'm listening to KC. You know, that's my girl from Oakland.
Okay.
So, so I listen to a little bit of listen to everything.
Yes, ma'am. And I have a diverse taste in music as well. And sometimes, when I'm not listening to all my tough gangster music, sometimes I listen to I remember when my heart broke.
There you
I
go.
remember when I gave up loving you. For everybody who knows the Keisha Cole, shout out to Keisha Cole
Yes,
fans out there
yes,
for sure. All right. One
absolutely.
more question for you, ma'am. What would you like your legacy to be?
That I was a fighter for my people.
Mm,
That's it. A
okay.
fighter for my people.
Praise be to Allah. Well, I want to make sure that I know that after I upload this on YouTube, the sisters are going to be reaching out to Sis LaTricia, for some advice and all your finger snapping and motherhood and marriage. So can the sisters reach out to you to, help them, talk about prenatal, all the stuff that you were just saying. Can they talk to you about that?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful.
Yes, sir. I'm not on Facebook too much, so I'm pretty much on Instagram, and that is LaTricia Blue Tulips. I think that's my Instagram handle. I have to double check.
Yes, ma'am.
It's been so long since I set it up. You know how you forget those types of things.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I'm Blue Tulips 19. Yes, I'm Blue Tulips 19.
Wonderful. Well, I
No
want to thank.
underscores, no dots, or anything else after.
Great. Let's make sure we tap in. All MGT tap in. Well, I want to thank you. It was an honor meeting you. I love hearing stories about my mother. So I took your spirit back to my siblings and was like, hey, she knew mama, so that's always a great thing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for helping, work the white carpet, you and all of the sisters that was holding it down while we were on the white carpet. Y'all had the spirit to help me keep going because it was stressful out there with the people's podcast live. I'm not used to the white carpet set up. So the MGT was helping keep everything going. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off for the People's Podcast. May Allah continue to bless you and your family, ma'am. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you. You as well.
Yes, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.